The woman screamed before anyone even saw what had happened. The sound cut through the cabin like torn metal, sharp and panicked, and for half a second every head turned at once. A plastic cup rolled across the aisle, spinning, sloshing clear liquid onto the carpet. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "Jesus." And in seat 1A, the woman who had just been screamed at did not move at all. It was Christmas Eve, late afternoon, and Flight 728 sat motionless at the gate in Salt Lake City. Engines quiet, cabin sealed, the air thick with recycled warmth and unspoken impatience. Outside the windows, snow fell in wide, lazy sheets, coating the tarmac in white silence. Inside first class, the silence had just shattered. Her name was Evelyn Carter. At least, that was the name printed on the boarding pass, tucked neatly into the seat pocket. 58 years old, dark coat folded on her lap, hands calm, fingers loosely interlaced. The water that had splashed against her sleeve clung to the wool, darkening it, dripping slowly toward her wrist. She stared at the wet fabric as if it belonged to someone else. Across the aisle, standing too close, was Donna Hargreave, 63. Hair sprayed into place like armor, jaw tight, chest rising fast, then faster. Her hand still hovered in the air where the cup had left it, fingers trembling, as if she herself could not believe what they had done. "I did not mean to," Donna said, too loudly. "I was startled. She moved suddenly. Anyone would have dropped it." No one answered her. A man in 2C shifted in his seat. A woman in 3A pressed her lips together and looked down at her phone without unlocking it. The flight attendant at the forward galley had gone very still, eyes locked on the scene, already reaching for the interphone. Evelyn finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes were dark, steady, and far too calm for the moment. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She simply said, "You threw that at me." Donna laughed once, short and brittle. "Threw is a strong word. Let us not exaggerate. It was water. And frankly, if you had just moved when I asked, none of this would have happened." There it was. The justification. The pivot. The quiet shift of blame. 10 minutes earlier, none of this had existed. There had been soft boarding music, the gentle hum of overhead vents, polite nods between strangers who had paid too much money to sit near the front and expected peace in return. Donna had boarded first, as she always insisted on doing, clutching her leather tote like proof of rank. Her husband, Michael, followed behind her with the resigned posture of a man who had learned when silence was safer. They had reached row 1 and stopped. Donna had looked at the seat numbers, then at Evelyn, then back at the numbers. 1B, right next to her. Donna had frowned, slowly, deliberately. She took in Evelyn's coat, the lack of jewelry, the scuffed leather on her shoes. She did not see luxury. She saw absence, and absence offended her. "Are you in the right seat?" Donna asked, voice already edged with doubt disguised as politeness. Evelyn had glanced at the number stitched into the headrest. 1A. "Yes," she said. "I am." Donna had smiled thinly. "You might want to double-check. First class is full tonight." "So am I," Evelyn replied. That should have been the end of it. But Donna did not sit down. She hovered, blocking the aisle, forcing the people behind her to wait. A few seconds stretched. The pressure rose. Michael cleared his throat. "Donna?" She ignored him. She leaned closer to Evelyn, lowering her voice in a way that suggested secrecy, but carried easily in the quiet cabin. "This flight is very important to us. We paid full fare, holiday pricing, you understand?" Evelyn looked up at her, puzzled, as if trying to locate the point of the statement. "Yes," she said. "So did I." Donna's smile vanished. She straightened, loud again. "I asked because sometimes there are mistakes. Upgrades, courtesy seats, Employees commuting. A few heads turned. Evelyn felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear, but recognition. She had heard this tone before. In boardrooms, in charity luncheons, in places where power wore perfume. "I am not an employee," Evelyn said. Donna exhaled sharply. "Then perhaps you could be considerate. I prefer a quiet row. You look like someone who might enjoy sitting farther back." Evelyn did not answer right away. She studied Donna's face, the flushed cheeks, the expectation, the certainty that the world would bend if pushed hard enough. "No," she said at last. "I will remain here." The word no landed badly. Donna stiffened. Her eyes flicked to the flight attendant, then back. She sat down hard in her seat, muttering under her breath. Michael slipped into 2B behind her, shoulders hunched, already bracing. The plane had not yet pushed back. Snow delayed everything. Time stretched, and Donna stewed. It started small. A sigh, a comment about legroom, a complaint about the temperature. Each remark aimed just slightly toward Evelyn, testing, probing. Evelyn kept her eyes forward, breathing slow, refusing to feed it. When the drinks came, Donna ordered water, extra ice. The flight attendant handed it over with practiced neutrality, already sensing the tension. Donna took one sip, then she turned. "Evelyn," she said, tapping her armrest, "could you hand me a napkin? They forgot mine." The request was framed like a favor. The expectation beneath it was not. "The napkins are in the seat pocket in front of you," Evelyn said. Donna's eyes hardened. She leaned forward, voice sharp now. "Do not be difficult. It would take you 2 seconds." Evelyn felt the weight of the moment settle. The choice. Compliance or line drawn. She shook her head once. "I am not here to serve you." That was when Donna stood. Too fast, too angry. The cup tipped. Water arced through the air. And the scream came after, not before, as if Donna needed sound to justify the motion. Now, in the aftermath, the cabin waited. The flight attendant's voice came over the interphone, controlled but urgent. "Captain to the cabin, immediately." Donna folded her arms, chin high, already rewriting the story in her mind. "I am a paying customer," she announced to no one in particular. I was provoked. Michael did not look up. His hands were clenched in his lap. Evelyn remained seated, water dripping, heart steady. Around her, the plane felt smaller, tighter, like a courtroom before a verdict. Outside, the snow kept falling, indifferent. And somewhere, deep inside the aircraft, something far larger than a spilled drink had just been set in motion. The captain arrived with the sound of authority before his face appeared. Firm footsteps. A pause at the curtain. Then Captain Raymond Holt stepped into the aisle. Tall, silver-haired, his uniform immaculate, his expression already tightened by experience. 40 years in the air had taught him to read silence better than noise, and the silence in first class was heavy, charged, wrong. "What is the situation?" he asked, voice level, eyes moving from the wet carpet to the rigid woman standing in the aisle, then to the seated woman with water darkening her sleeve. Donna spoke first. Of course she did. She always did. "Captain," she said, forcing a laugh that landed flat. "I was startled. She moved suddenly. I spilled my drink. It was an accident, really." Evelyn did not interrupt. She did not correct. She simply watched the captain, studying the small shifts in his posture as he took in the details. The cup on the floor, the ice melting into the carpet, the way Donna stood too straight, too defensive, the way Michael sat behind her, eyes fixed on the tray table, as if staring hard enough might erase the last 10 minutes. The flight attendant, Rebecca, spoke next. Her voice was calm but tight. "Captain, Witnesses observed the liquid leave Mrs. Hargreaves' hand and make contact with Miss Carter. This occurred while the aircraft was still at the gate, seatbelt sign illuminated. Captain Holt nodded once. "Thank you." He turned to Donna. "Ma'am, I need you to take your seat." Donna blinked, offended. "Excuse me?" "Now, please," he said. She hesitated, then sat, smoothing her jacket as if preparing for a photograph. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "Over water." Captain Holt shifted his attention to Evelyn. "Ma'am, are you injured?" "No," Evelyn said. "Just wet." Her voice was steady, but her pulse was not. She could feel it now, the quiet thrum beneath her ribs. Not fear, something older. The awareness that moments like this rarely stayed small. Captain Holt looked at her sleeve. He inhaled slowly. "Did you wish to file a complaint?" Evelyn met his gaze. "Yes." Donna snorted. "Of course you do." Captain Holt's eyes snapped back to Donna. "That is enough." Donna opened her mouth again, then closed it. Michael placed a hand on her arm. "Donna, please." She shook him off. "Do not touch me." The captain straightened. "Mrs. Hargreave, based on what I am hearing, this qualifies as disruptive behavior, possibly assault. At this moment, I am pausing boarding and contacting airport security." The word security landed hard. Donna's color shifted. "That seems extreme." The captain did not argue. "Rebecca," he said, "contact ground. Request assistance at the gate." Rebecca moved instantly. Donna leaned forward, lowering her voice, conspiratorial. "Captain, let us be reasonable. It is Christmas Eve. Everyone is tired. I am sure this can be handled without making a scene." Around them, the scene already existed. Passengers watched openly now. A man in 2D shook his head. The woman in 3A whispered something under her breath that sounded like, "Unbelievable." Captain Holt looked back at Evelyn. "Ma'am, I will need your full name for the report." Evelyn paused for half a second. Then she said it. "Evelyn Brooks." The name did nothing in the cabin. No gasps, no recognition. Donna smirked. "See?" she said. "Nobody." But Rebecca froze, just for a fraction of a second. A hitch so small most people would have missed it. She had been reaching for the handset. Her fingers stopped. Captain Holt noticed. "Rebecca," he said quietly. Rebecca swallowed. "Captain, may I speak with you privately?" Donna scoffed. "Oh, come on." Captain Holt raised a hand. "Mrs. Hargreave, please remain seated." He stepped aside with Rebecca, just far enough that their voices dropped below the hum of the cabin, but close enough that Evelyn could see Rebecca's face drain of color. "Captain," Rebecca whispered, "that passenger, Evelyn Brooks, she is not just—" Rebecca stopped herself. Captain Holt frowned. "Not just what?" Rebecca leaned closer. "She is the chair of the board." The words settled slowly. Captain Holt did not react outwardly. Years of command kept his face neutral, but something shifted behind his eyes. He looked back toward Evelyn. Really looked this time. The posture, the stillness, the way she had not once raised her voice. Rebecca continued, quieter now. "Majority shareholder. Took over 5 years ago after the restructuring. She flies anonymously, prefers no announcements." Captain Holt exhaled through his nose. Understood. Donna watched them whispering, irritation growing. "What is going on over there?" she called out. "If you are going to kick someone off this plane, do it already." Captain Holt turned back, expression unreadable. "Mrs. Hargreave, please remain quiet." She laughed sharply. "Or what? You will call the president." Michael leaned forward now, voice strained. "Donna, stop." She glared at him. Do not side with them. Captain Holt faced Evelyn again. Ms. Brooks, he said carefully, would you like to proceed with formal charges, or would you prefer we resolve this administratively? The cabin leaned in without moving. Evelyn felt every eye on her now. She thought of the millions of dollars riding on this aircraft, the crew whose jobs depended on calm, not chaos, the families waiting on the other end of this flight. She also thought of the water on her sleeve, the assumption in Donna's eyes, the casual cruelty dressed up as entitlement. I want the report filed, Evelyn said, and I want her removed from the flight. Donna shot to her feet. What? Captain Holt did not hesitate. Rebecca, inform ground we have a passenger to be removed for assault and refusal to comply. Donna's voice cracked. You cannot be serious. Michael stood now too, panic rising. Captain, please. My wife is under a lot of stress. We can apologize. Right, Donna? Donna stared at Evelyn, disbelief giving way to fear. This is insane. Who do you think you are? Evelyn met her gaze. Someone who does not tolerate being treated this way. Donna laughed, high and shrill. By you? The cabin door opened with a dull thud. Cold air rushed in. Boots echoed on the jet bridge. Donna turned just as two airport security officers stepped aboard. Captain Holt pointed. Mrs. Hargreave, please gather your belongings. Donna's mouth opened, then closed. She looked around, searching for allies. Found none. Michael sank back into his seat, face pale. As the officers approached, Donna whispered, almost to herself, This cannot be happening. Evelyn watched in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on the cabin like altitude. The reveal had not come yet. Not fully. But the balance had already shifted. And once a balance shifts, it never goes back the same way. The officers stopped a few feet from Donna, their presence heavy and procedural, not rushed, not cruel, just inevitable. One of them spoke in a calm voice that had said the same words hundreds of times before. Ma'am, we need you to step into the aisle and come with us. Donna stared at them as if they were props in a play that had gone terribly off script. This is absurd, she said. I have done nothing wrong. She turned to the captain. Tell them. You saw it. It was a misunderstanding. Captain Holt did not move. Mrs. Hargreave, he said, you are being removed for assaultive behavior and refusal to comply with crew instructions. You will have an opportunity to explain your version to airport security. Assault. The word hit the cabin like a dropped tray. Donna flinched. Assault implies intent, she snapped. That is a legal term. You cannot just throw it around. The officer did not argue. Ma'am, please gather your belongings. Donna's hands shook as she reached for her tote. Papers spilled onto the floor. A folded scarf, a paperback novel with a cracked spine. Michael stood halfway and stopped, trapped between instinct and fear. He opened his mouth, closed it again. His eyes darted to Evelyn, then away. Donna noticed. Her voice lowered, sharp with betrayal. You are just going to sit there. Michael swallowed. Donna, please, let us just do what they ask. Her head whipped toward him. Do not abandon me. The word hung there, raw. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. Evelyn remained seated. She felt the urge to look away, to give Donna privacy and humiliation. But she did not. Not out of spite. Out of witness. This moment mattered. Not just for her. For the crew. For every person who had ever been asked to make themselves smaller to keep the peace. As Donna stepped into the aisle, her heel caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled. One of the officers reached out instinctively, steadying her elbow. The touch was brief, professional, but it broke something in her. Her face crumpled, then hardened again.
"This is because of her," Donna said, pointing at Evelyn.
"You are choosing her over us." Captain Holt's voice was firm. "We are choosing safety and order." Donna laughed bitterly. "Over what? A splash of water?" Rebecca spoke then, unable to keep the tremor out of her voice. "Over behavior. Over respect. Over the fact that everyone on this plane deserves to arrive without fear." Donna turned on her. "You should be ashamed, enabling this. You do not even know who she is." Rebecca did not look away. "I know exactly who she is." The words landed softly, but changed the temperature in the cabin. Donna paused, her brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" Rebecca said nothing more. She did not need to. The officers guided Donna toward the door. Snowlight spilled in through the open hatch, bright and cold. The cabin felt suddenly exposed, as if the outside world had pushed its way in to observe the reckoning. Donna stopped at the threshold and turned back one last time. Her eyes locked onto Evelyn. "You think you have won something," she said. "This will follow you. People like me do not forget." Evelyn stood then, slowly, deliberately. The movement drew every gaze. She stepped into the aisle, close enough that Donna could see her clearly now. The water stain on her sleeve had spread, the fabric darker, heavier. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and even. "People like you forget all the time," Evelyn said. "You forget that the world is bigger than your assumptions. You forget that silence is not consent. And you forget that consequences arrive whether you believe in them or not." Donna stared at her, searching for something to latch onto. Anger, fear, superiority. Found none. The officers resumed their gentle pressure. Donna did not resist. She was led out into the cold, her footsteps echoing down the jet bridge, each one sounding smaller than the last. The door closed. The latch engaged with a metallic click that felt final. For a long moment, no one moved. Captain Holt cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We will resume boarding shortly." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Not applause, something quieter. Relief. A shared exhale. Evelyn sat back down. Her hands trembled now, just slightly. The adrenaline ebbing, leaving space for feeling. She had not planned to stand. The words had simply come. She wondered if she had said too much, or not enough. Michael remained seated in 2B, staring at the back of the empty seat ahead of him. The space where Donna had been felt like a wound. He rubbed his face with both hands, then let them fall. He did not look at Evelyn. Rebecca approached Evelyn's seat, lowering her voice. "Miss Brooks, are you all right?" Evelyn nodded. "I will be." Rebecca hesitated. "Captain Holt would like a word when you are ready." Evelyn understood. She gathered her coat, smoothing the damp sleeve, and followed Rebecca toward the front galley. The space was narrow, utilitarian, a world away from the plush illusion of first class. Captain Holt waited there, posture relaxed but attentive. He met her eyes and inclined his head slightly. "Miss Brooks, thank you for your discretion." Evelyn returned the nod. "Thank you for handling it by the book." He allowed himself a faint smile. "We try." A beat passed, then another. He lowered his voice. "Would you prefer that we keep your identity private for the remainder of the flight?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Please." Understood. They stood there for a moment longer, listening to the sounds of boarding resume. The shuffle of feet, the rustle of coats. Life moving forward. When Evelyn returned to her seat, the cabin felt different. Not quieter, clearer, as if something unspoken had been acknowledged and set aside. Michael finally looked up as she passed. Their eyes met for half a second. In his, she saw regret. Not just for what had happened, but for what it revealed. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He did not speak. Evelyn sat down, fastening her seatbelt. Outside, the snow continued to fall, indifferent and steady. The plane was ready now, but the truth was not done rising. The aircraft pushed back just as dusk swallowed the last of the mountains. Snow streaked past the windows in diagonal lines, thin and relentless, the kind that promised a long night for anyone left behind. Inside the cabin, the mood had shifted from shock to something quieter, heavier. People spoke in lower voices. Movements were slower, more deliberate, as if everyone had become aware that this flight carried more than luggage. Evelyn sat still in seat 1A, hands folded now, eyes forward. The damp sleeve of her coat had cooled against her skin, a faint reminder she had not bothered to change. She wanted to feel it. She wanted to remember exactly how quickly dignity could be tested, how casually it could be challenged. Michael remained in 2B, alone. The space beside him felt unnaturally wide. He'd buckled his seatbelt with shaking hands, then unbuckled it again, then finally left it clasped, as if deciding that at least this one instruction he could follow without hesitation. He stared at the empty headrest in front of him, seeing none of it. The safety video played. A cheerful voice talked about oxygen masks and flotation devices. No one laughed. No one rolled their eyes. The absurd contrast settled deep in Michael's chest. He thought of Donna's hand, fingers still curved in midair after the cup left it. Thought of the look on her face when the officers stepped on board. Not anger, then. Not entitlement. Fear. Real fear. And the worst part was that it had taken uniformed men and the threat of removal to make it appear. Michael closed his eyes. He had known for years that Donna crossed lines. In restaurants, in stores, with people she believed could not answer back. He had smoothed things over, apologized quietly, tipped generously. Told himself it was easier than conflict. He had mistaken avoidance for peace. The plane lurched slightly as the tug disengaged, a soft jolt, the kind seasoned travelers barely noticed. Michael noticed everything. Rebecca moved down the aisle, checking belts. When she reached 2B, she paused half a second longer than necessary. Her eyes flicked to the empty seat beside him, then to his face. She did not smile. "Sir," she said evenly, "seatbelt, please." He nodded quickly. "Yes, of course." Her gaze lingered, not accusatory, not kind, observant. Then she moved on. Michael swallowed. The moment felt like judgment, even though no words had been spoken. He wondered how many people on this plane knew exactly what he had failed to do. Up front, Captain Holt's voice came over the intercom, steady and calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience this evening. We are number 2 for departure. Flight time to Boston will be approximately 4 hours. We appreciate your cooperation." Cooperation. The word landed hard. As the engine spooled up, the vibration traveled through the cabin, through the seat frames, into bone. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, letting the sound anchor her. She had learned long ago that moments like these demanded stillness, not reaction. Control did not come from force. It came from restraint. When she opened her eyes, she felt someone watching her. She turned slightly. Michael was looking at her. His face was pale, drawn, the lines around his mouth deeper than before. He held her gaze for a moment, then spoke, voice low, barely carrying over the engine hum. "I am sorry." The words were small, insufficient, honest. Evelyn did not answer right away. She studied him, the way she studied men across conference tables when they asked for leniency too late. She saw fear there, yes, but also relief. Relief that someone else had finally stopped what he never had. "I believe you are," she said at last. He nodded, as if grateful for even that. "My wife is not. She struggles." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "Many people struggle," she said. "Few choose to humiliate others to feel steady." Michael flinched. The truth landed cleanly. The plane began its takeoff roll. Acceleration pressed them back into their seats. The lights dimmed. The nose lifted. For a brief moment, gravity held everyone equally. Titles dissolved. Accounts meant nothing. Everyone was just human, trusting metal and training and the discipline of strangers. As the aircraft climbed into the dark, Evelyn looked out the window at the blur of white falling away beneath them. Somewhere below, Donna was still on the ground, cold, furious, facing consequences she had never believed applied to her. Michael turned forward again, shoulders sagging. The city lights receded. The future pressed closer. And in the thin air above the storm, the cost of silence finally became impossible to ignore. The cabin settled into cruising altitude, the engines easing into a steady, almost comforting hum. Seatbelt signs clicked off. A soft chime. Movement resumed, cautious at first, like people testing ice after a crack. Overhead bins opened and closed. Coats were adjusted. Lives attempted to return to their scheduled programming. But nothing was the same. Evelyn felt it in the air. A subtle shift. Not reverence, not curiosity. Awareness. People had seen something rupture, something that usually stayed hidden beneath manners and money. They were still processing it, each in their own quiet way. Rebecca returned to the front with a tray, stopping briefly at 1A. Her posture remained professional, but her voice softened just a fraction. "Ms. Brooks, would you like a fresh jacket? We have an extra." Evelyn looked down at the darkened sleeve, then shook her head. "Thank you, I am fine." Rebecca hesitated. She wanted to say more. Gratitude, solidarity, something human. But she swallowed it and moved on, as she had been trained to do. Still, when she passed 2D, she heard a woman murmur, "Good for her," and felt a warmth spread through her chest. Michael watched the exchange from 2B. He had not moved since takeoff. His drink sat untouched on the tray table, ice melting slowly, the waterline creeping upward like a quiet accusation. He stared at it, then pushed it away. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice again. "Miss Brooks." Evelyn turned. "I need to say this," he said. "Not for forgiveness. Just because it is true. I have spent years pretending my wife's behavior was harmless. Eccentric. Stress." He exhaled. "I let her believe she was untouchable." Evelyn listened without interrupting. The confessional tone was familiar. People often found it easier to speak once consequences were no longer abstract. "Silence is a form of permission," she said, "especially when it comes from someone with power." Michael nodded. "I see that now." "Do you?" she asked. "Or do you see it because today it cost you something?" The question was not cruel. It was precise. Michael's jaw tightened. "Both," he admitted. She accepted that. Growth rarely arrived cleanly. Further back, conversations had begun in low tones. Two men in 3C and D leaned toward each other, voices barely audible. "Did you see her throw the cup? Right at her. Unreal." The other shook his head. People forget themselves when they think no one can stop them. A woman across the aisle dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Not crying exactly, just unsettled. "I have daughters," she whispered to her seatmate. "I hope they never think they have to shrink to keep the peace." The words drifted forward, landing somewhere near Evelyn's heart. Dinner service began. Plates clinked softly. The smell of warm bread filled the cabin. Rebecca moved with renewed focus, her back straighter now, her smile more assured. This was her domain again. Order restored. Captain Holt's voice came over the intercom once more, lower now, less formal. We appreciate everyone's cooperation earlier. Our crew is here to ensure a safe and respectful flight for all. If there is anything you need, please let us know. Respectful. The word carried weight now. Evelyn ate slowly, more out of habit than hunger. Her thoughts drifted, not backward, but outward. She wondered how many moments like this happened every day, unseen, unresolved. How many people walked away damp, humiliated, swallowing their anger because speaking up felt too expensive. She had built her career dismantling systems that thrived on that silence. Not loudly, not dramatically, methodically. One policy at a time, one standard enforced when it mattered. Michael cleared his throat again. Ms. Brooks, he said, I do not expect you to consider this now, or ever, but I want you to know that what happened tonight will change things, at least for me. Evelyn met his eyes.
Change is not declared, she said. It is demonstrated. Over time, especially when no one is watching. He absorbed that.
Yes, he said, I understand. The cabin lights dimmed further, shifting to a soft amber glow. Outside, the storm thinned, clouds breaking apart beneath them. Stars began to appear, sharp and distant. Evelyn leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. She felt the plane steady beneath her, felt the collective breath of the passengers ease. This was not victory. It was alignment. A brief moment where the world had corrected itself, just enough. When she opened her eyes again, Michael was facing forward, hands folded, finally still. The empty seat beside him remained empty, a quiet testament to a choice deferred too long. Evelyn turned toward the window. The wing cut cleanly through the night, lights blinking at its edge. Somewhere ahead, the city waited. Consequences waited. And for once, so did accountability. The flight continued, calm on the surface, changed beneath it. The hours passed in a way that felt both slow and compressed, as if time itself had learned to move carefully. Most of the cabin slept. Heads leaned against windows, blankets were pulled higher. The kind of quiet that only comes when exhaustion finally wins, settled over the aircraft. Evelyn did not sleep. She sat upright, eyes open, watching reflections drift across the dark window. Her mind was sharp now, painfully clear. The incident replayed not as chaos, but as sequence, decision, response, outcome. She had learned long ago that emotion dulled memory, but clarity sharpened it. She wanted to remember every detail, not for revenge, but for calibration. Systems only improved when friction was examined honestly. A shadow shifted in the aisle. Captain Holt stepped forward from the cockpit, movements deliberate, careful not to wake passengers. He stopped beside seat 1A, lowering his voice. Miss Brooks. Evelyn turned. Yes, Captain. May I speak with you for a moment? She nodded and unbuckled, following him toward the galley. The space was dim, lit only by instrument glow and the faint spill from the cockpit door. It smelled of coffee and metal. Captain Holt rested one hand on the counter, choosing his words. I have filed the incident report as required. Airport security has transferred the passenger to local authorities. Charges will be reviewed in the morning. Evelyn listened, face unreadable. There is also the matter of the witness statements, he continued. Several passengers corroborated the event. The crew included their observations. This was handled cleanly. She met his eyes. Thank you for following procedure. He inclined his head slightly. It matters. A pause settled between them. Not awkward, respectful. "If I may," Captain said carefully, "this flight has been under my command for a long time. I have seen confrontations before. Not many end this way." Evelyn understood what he was really saying. "I did not plan for it to," she said, "but I will not absorb mistreatment to preserve comfort for others." Captain Holt's mouth tightened in approval. "Nor should you." He hesitated, then added, "I did not announce your position to the cabin. I felt it was not my place." "That was the correct call," Evelyn said. "Authority does not need a microphone." A faint smile touched his lips. He stepped back. "We will be landing shortly. I wanted you informed." "Thank you, Captain." When she returned to her seat, the cabin remained still. Michael was awake now, though he pretended otherwise, eyes closed but brow furrowed. He felt the movement as she passed. He knew something had just shifted again. The plane began its descent over the dark Atlantic, the gentle tilt barely perceptible. The lights brightened incrementally, easing passengers back toward consciousness. The hum of conversation returned in fragments. Michael opened his eyes fully now. He watched Evelyn out of the corner of his vision, then spoke, voice low. "They are charging her." Evelyn did not look at him. "The authorities will decide." He swallowed. "I spoke to a lawyer during the flight." "Of course you did." He exhaled sharply, not offended. Realistic. "They advised me to cooperate fully, to distance myself." "Distance does not undo proximity," Evelyn said, "but it can prevent further harm." He nodded, accepting the line where it landed. "I did not know who you were," he said. "Not until tonight." Evelyn turned to him then. "And if you had known?" Michael looked away. He did not answer. That was answer enough. The landing gear deployed with a muted thump. The city lights of Boston spread beneath them, orderly and indifferent. The plane touched down smoothly, tires kissing the runway, reverse thrust roaring briefly before fading. As they taxied to the gate, an announcement came over the intercom. "Local law enforcement will be meeting the aircraft upon arrival. Please remain seated." A ripple of tension passed through the cabin. Heads lifted, eyes sharpened. Michael's shoulders slumped. When the seatbelt sign went off, no one rushed to stand. People waited, watched. The cabin door opened. Cold air rushed in, sharp and real. 2 officers stepped aboard, scanning faces with practiced neutrality. They moved down the aisle, not toward Evelyn, but past her. Michael felt the air leave his lungs. An officer stopped beside 2B, Mr. Hargreave. Michael looked up. "Yes." "Sir, we need you to come with us briefly to answer a few questions regarding an incident earlier this evening." Michael glanced at Evelyn. Just once. She did not look back. He stood, legs unsteady, and followed them down the aisle. Conversations hushed completely now. This was not spectacle. This was process. Evelyn remained seated until the cabin cleared. Rebecca appeared at her side once more. "Ms. Brooks, your car is waiting." Evelyn gathered her things slowly. As she stepped into the jet bridge, she heard Michael's voice behind her, distant, strained, explaining, apologizing, justifying. She did not turn around. Outside, the night was clear, cold, honest. She paused for a moment at the threshold, breathing in the air, feeling the weight of the flight finally release its grip. Tomorrow would bring board calls, legal reviews, quiet conversations framed as concern. But tonight had already done its work. Power had not raised its voice. It had simply refused to bend. And that, Evelyn knew, was what would linger long after the plane was empty. Morning arrived without ceremony. Grey light slid across the tarmac as if nothing unusual had happened the night before. Snowbanks had been pushed aside. Cones stood where police cars had been. The airport breathed again, efficient and indifferent. For most of the passengers, the flight was already becoming a story they would tell carefully, shaping it into something safer with time. For Evelyn, it was still present. She sat in the back seat of the car as it pulled away from the terminal, hands resting in her lap, coat folded neatly beside her. The driver said nothing. He had learned that silence was not emptiness. It was respect. Her phone vibrated once, then again. She did not rush to look. She watched the city pass by instead, brick and glass sliding into view, the Charles River dull and still under the cold sky. When she finally lifted the phone, the screen was already crowded. A message from legal. Security confirmed the charge will proceed. Misdemeanor assault. Disorderly conduct added. Another from operations. Crew commendation filed. Passenger statements archived. Then one from the board liaison. Media has not picked it up yet. A blogger asked for comment. We said no statement at this time. Evelyn exhaled slowly. That was good. Quiet mattered. Noise distorted truth. She typed a single response. No public comment. Follow protocol. Protect the crew. The phone went still again. At a red light, she caught her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her seemed unchanged. Same posture, same composed eyes. But she knew better. Events like that left residue, not damage, information. Her mind drifted, uninvited, to Donna. Not the woman on the jet bridge, shouting. Not the one in the aisle, pointing, demanding. But the one who would wake up that morning somewhere unfamiliar, under fluorescent lights, stomach hollow, certainty cracked. Evelyn did not take pleasure in that image, but she did not turn away from it either. Consequences were not cruelty. They were alignment. The car turned onto a quieter street, tires humming softly. Evelyn's phone buzzed again, this time a number she recognized. Michael. She considered letting it go. There was nothing left to say. But leadership, she had learned, sometimes meant finishing conversations even when they were uncomfortable. She answered. Ms. Books. His voice came through, thin, hoarse. Thank you for taking the call. This is not a favor, Evelyn said calmly. Speak. He swallowed. They released her early this morning. Citation issued. She is angry, confused. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. That is not unexpected. There was a pause. I have retained separate counsel, Michael continued. Not for her, for myself. Evelyn waited. I am stepping down from the firm, effective immediately, he said. The board will announce it as health-related. I wanted you to hear it from me. That surprised her, not because it was dramatic, because it was overdue. You believe this resolves what happened? She asked. No, he said quickly. I believe it acknowledges it. I should have intervened long before last night. Evelyn opened her eyes. The street ahead was clear now, stretching long and quiet. Accountability is not a moment, Mr. Hargreave. It is a pattern. If this is the beginning, then perhaps it matters. He exhaled shakily. That is all I hoped. They ended the call without ceremony. When the car stopped outside her building, Evelyn stepped out into the cold. The doorman nodded. Nothing in his expression suggested he knew anything. Or perhaps he knew and understood the etiquette of not acknowledging it. Upstairs, her apartment was still, orderly, familiar. She placed her coat on the chair and stood for a moment in the center of the room, listening to the silence she had earned. Her phone vibrated one last time. A message from Rebecca. I wanted to say thank you, not as crew, as a person. Last night mattered. Evelyn stared at the words longer than she expected to. Then she typed back. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. That is what changes things. She set the phone down. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, something had settled into place. Not triumph, not justice. Something quieter. Balance. Evelyn walked to the window and looked out at the morning. The world was not fixed. It never was. But sometimes, if the right line was held at the right moment, it bent a little closer to what it should be. And that, she thought, was enough for now. The day did not end where it should have. By mid-morning, Evelyn sat at the long walnut table in the executive conference room, the city framed behind her in glass and steel. Coffee steamed untouched. Tablets lay dark. Faces around the table were composed, but their eyes carried the residue of the night before. These were people who understood turbulence. Market turbulence. Regulatory turbulence. But this had been something else. Human. Unscripted. No one mentioned the flight at first. They discussed quarterly forecasts, winter staffing shortages, rising fuel costs, the familiar language of control. Evelyn listened, nodded, asked precise questions. She was fully present, and yet part of her remained 35,000 feet above the ground, replaying moments not for emotion, but for implication. Finally, David Langford, General Counsel, cleared his throat. Evelyn. She looked up. We need to discuss exposure, not legally, reputationally. There it was. He continued carefully. A passenger incident involving leadership. If it surfaces, the narrative may not be ours to shape. Evelyn folded her hands. And if it does? David hesitated. The public tends to compress stories. Villain, victim, symbol. They may expect a response. Evelyn considered that. She thought of Donna's certainty, of Michael's silence, of Rebecca's trembling restraint, of the officers who had done nothing dramatic, only their jobs. She thought of how quickly a moment could be stripped of nuance and turned into spectacle. Then we do not give them one, she said. A few brows lifted. We do not sanitize it. We do not dramatize it. We do not turn it into a brand moment. We let the facts stand, and we protect the people who upheld the standard. That is the response. The room was quiet. Someone nodded slowly. David exhaled. Understood. Another executive leaned forward. Operations handled it well. The crew followed procedure. There were witnesses. No irregularities. As there should not have been, Evelyn said. She stood, signaling the end of discussion. That incident is not a crisis. It is a reminder. And reminders do not require spin. They require memory. The meeting moved on, but something had shifted beneath the surface. Authority had been clarified, not by title, by action. Later, alone in her office, Evelyn closed the door and leaned against it for just a moment longer than necessary. The quiet pressed in. Not heavy, honest. Her assistant knocked softly, then entered. There is one more thing, she said. The crew from that flight. They were shaken, but proud. Evelyn smiled faintly. They should be. She walked to the window again, watching people move far below, each carrying their own unseen stories. The world had not changed overnight. It never did. But lines had been drawn, boundaries held. Power, she thought, was not revealed in the moment of confrontation. It was revealed in what followed, in whether the line stayed drawn once the room emptied. She turned back to her desk and began to write. Not a statement, not an apology. A note. To herself. To remember. Because the real test was not what happened on the plane. It was what she would allow to happen after. The pressure did not come all at once. It never did. It arrived in pieces. A question phrased as concern. A suggestion wrapped in reassurance. A call that began with praise and ended with expectation. By afternoon, Evelyn had received 3 of them. The first came from a long-time donor to the Airline's foundation. Warm voice, familiar name. He spoke about understanding, about how emotions ran high during the holidays, about how unfortunate misunderstandings could spiral. He never once mentioned Donna by name. He did not need to. Evelyn listened without interruption, then thanked him for his time and ended the call. The second came from a retired senator who now sat on the advisory council. He spoke more bluntly. Reputations were fragile, he reminded her. People her age knew how quickly the public turned discomfort into judgment. Perhaps, he suggested, mercy would play better than firmness. Evelyn closed her eyes as he spoke, seeing again the cup leaving Donna's hand, the certainty behind it. When he finished, she said quietly, "Mercy is not the absence of consequence. It is the presence of fairness." Then she hung up. The third call came from someone she had not expected. Her older sister, Ruth. They had grown up together in a house where silence was survival. Their father's success had not softened him. It had sharpened his expectations. Ruth had learned to disappear. Evelyn had learned to endure. "I saw a headline draft," Ruth said without greeting. "It did not publish. Someone sent it to me." Evelyn felt a tightening in her chest. What did it say? Ruth hesitated. Christmas flight altercation. Airline executive involved. Passenger removed. Evelyn let out a slow breath. And people will read into it whatever they want," Ruth said gently. "I just wanted to know how you are." The question caught Evelyn off guard. Not how it looked, not what she planned to do. How she was. "I am tired," Evelyn admitted. "But I am clear." Ruth was quiet for a moment. "You were always like that. Clear, even when it cost you." Evelyn smiled faintly. It costs more not to be. After the call ended, she sat alone, hands resting on the desk, absorbing the shape of the resistance forming around her. None of it was hostile. That was the danger. It was smooth, polite, designed to make her doubt her own steadiness. She thought of Donna again, not with anger, but with a growing sense of context. Donna had not woken up cruel. She had been taught, reinforced, rewarded for mistaking dominance for worth. Her behavior was not an anomaly. It was a symptom. And systems did not change by removing one symptom. They changed by refusing to excuse it. That evening, Evelyn attended a small holiday reception hosted by the company. She had considered cancelling. Instead, she went, not as spectacle, as presence. The room was filled with employees, many with families in tow. Children clutched paper cups of cider. Older mechanics stood near the windows, hands deep in pockets, talking quietly. When Evelyn entered, conversation paused. Not out of awe, out of curiosity. She moved through the room slowly, stopping, listening. She thanked a baggage supervisor for 30 years of service, congratulated a dispatcher on her promotion, knelt to speak to a child about his toy airplane. No one mentioned the flight, but they did not need to. A maintenance lead approached her near the end, a man with oil-stained hands and a careful posture. "Ma'am," he said, "I just wanted to say what you did. Not because of who you are, but because you did not let it slide. That matters." Evelyn met his eyes. "It matters because people remember what is tolerated," she said, "especially from the top." He nodded, understanding something older than policy. Later, alone again, Evelyn stood on her balcony, the city lights flickering below. The wind was sharp, honest. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself and let the cold ground her. She knew this was not over. It would ripple. It always did. There would be opinions, editorials, debates framed by people who had not been there. who had not felt the weight of that moment in the cabin. But she also knew this: the line had held. And once a line holds under pressure, it becomes harder to erase. The first snow of Christmas morning fell without drama, thin flakes drifting down between buildings as if the city itself had decided to soften its edges. Evelyn stood by the window and watched it settle on ledges and railings, the world turning quieter, slower, more deliberate. The phone on the table behind her was silent for the first time in days. No alerts, no calls, no pressure disguised as concern. Just stillness. She let herself breathe. By mid-morning, the news cycle had moved on, exactly as she had expected. A weather delay here, a market fluctuation there. The incident on the flight appeared only as a brief mention on a local feed, stripped of names, stripped of spectacle. A disruptive passenger removed, crew praised for professionalism. That was enough. Truth did not always need volume. Sometimes it only needed accuracy. Evelyn poured herself coffee and sat at the small kitchen table, the same one she had used long before boardrooms and balance sheets. She opened her laptop, not to work, but to write. Not policy, not strategy. A letter. It was addressed to the employees of the airline. Not all employees, just those who worked the front lines. Flight attendants, gate agents, mechanics, the ones whose names never appeared in headlines, but whose decisions shaped moments that mattered. She did not mention herself. She did not mention the flight. She wrote instead about standards, about dignity, about the quiet courage it took to follow procedure when someone tried to intimidate their way around it. She thanked them for holding the line when it would have been easier not to. She signed it simply, Evelyn. She sent it and closed the laptop. Later that afternoon, her phone vibrated once. A message from Rebecca. "We got the note. People are talking about it. In a good way." Evelyn smiled, just a little. That was enough. The day unfolded gently after that. A walk through the neighborhood. A nod exchanged with a stranger shoveling his steps. The smell of bread from a nearby bakery drifting through cold air. Ordinary moments, unburdened by performance. That evening, as dusk settled in, Evelyn returned to her apartment and turned on a lamp, the warm light pushing back the grey. She sat on the couch and allowed her mind, finally, to slow. She thought of the flight again, but differently now, not as confrontation, as contrast. Two ways of moving through the world, one demanding space, the other claiming it by simply existing without apology. The collision had been inevitable. The outcome had been instructive. She did not feel victorious. Victory implied opponents. This had never been a contest. It had been a reckoning. Her phone rang. Ruth again. "I wanted to tell you," Ruth said. "I am proud of you." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Thank you. You always did have a way of standing still while the room shook," Ruth continued. "I never understood how." Evelyn thought of their childhood, of learning early that control did not come from noise. It came from knowing who you were, even when no one acknowledged it. Someone had to hold that ground. She had chosen to be that someone. "I learned it the hard way," she said. Ruth laughed softly. "Most important things are." They spoke for a few minutes more, about nothing urgent. About food, about weather, about memories that no longer hurt. When the call ended, Evelyn sat in the quiet again, the city humming faintly below. She stood and turned off the lamp, letting the room fall into shadow. At the window, she watched the last light fade from the sky, stars pricking through the dark. Somewhere, planes crossed paths overhead, their lights blinking in steady patterns, guided by systems built on trust and discipline. That was what she believed in. Not authority for its own sake, not dominance. Structure, accountability, the invisible agreements that allowed strangers to share space without fear. she thought of Donna, not with anger, but with clarity. Some people mistook volume for power. Some mistook cruelty for confidence. They learned otherwise only when confronted by a boundary that did not move. Tonight, that boundary held. Evelyn turned away from the window and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring work again. Decisions, meetings, the slow, patient labor of keeping things aligned. There would be no applause for that, no recognition. And that was fine. The world did not change in grand gestures. It changed when someone refused to step aside. As she lay down, the city quieted further, snow continuing its gentle descent. Somewhere, a crew member was finishing a shift. Somewhere, a passenger was thinking differently about what they had witnessed. Somewhere, a line drawn had begun to matter beyond the moment. Evelyn closed her eyes. If this story resonated, show support with a like, stay connected by subscribing, and share your thoughts with 3 words only.